Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of the Informing Choices mini-pod. If you follow the headlines, it's hard to escape the sense that we're standing on the edge of something quite unprecedented. Artificial intelligence is advancing at extraordinary speed. Machines are beginning to perform tasks once thought uniquely human. Entire industries are being reshaped in real time. It feels like the beginning of a radically new and different era. But here's a useful pause for thought. Every generation, when confronted with powerful new technologies, has felt exactly the same. The arrival of steam power, of electricity, and later of computing all prompted similar claims. But this time, everything could change. And in some ways, those claims were right, but also incomplete. Because while technologies may evolve rapidly, societies tend to adapt far more slowly and far more selectively. So today, we're going to explore a simple but important question. What does history tell us about how societies actually respond to powerful new technologies? And what might that mean for the future of AI? To understand where we might be heading, it's worth briefly looking back. Consider, for example, the Industrial Revolution. Steam power transformed production and transport, enabling factories, railways, and entirely new economic systems. But the transition was far from smooth. It disrupted livelihoods, it displaced workers, and it triggered resistance. The Luddite protests are a well-known example, not a rejection of the technology itself, but a reaction to how the technology was being used. Move forward to electrification in the early 20th century. Electrical power made mass production possible. It reshaped cities and industries. But here's the interesting part. The productivity gains we now associate with electrification took decades to materialize. Businesses had to reorganize, processes had to change, institutions had to catch up with the technology. The technology arrived first, transformation came later. And then more recently, computing and the internet. These technologies have reshaped communication, commerce, and access to information. But even now, we're still grappling with their wider implications, from misinformation to the power of platforms. Across all these examples, a consistent pattern emerges. Technological revolutions do not unfold in a smooth, predictable way. They move through cycles of breakthrough, of excitement, overreach, resistance, adaptation, and eventually stabilization. Perhaps most importantly, technological capability and social adoption move at different speeds. So if this pattern is so well established, why does this moment feel different? The answer lies, I think, in something new: simultaneous technological convergence. In previous years, major technologies have tended to emerge in distinct waves: steam, then electricity, then computing. Today, multiple powerful technologies are advancing in parallel and increasingly interacting with each other. AI is not developing in isolation. It's converging with robotics, biotechnology, advanced computing, digital infrastructure, new energy and material systems. The result is not just faster change, it's compound acceleration. Each technology amplifies the others, and it creates three important shifts, I think. The first is the speed of diffusion. Technologies now scale globally in years rather than decades. Secondly, the automation of cognition. We are no longer just automating physical tasks, but decision making and analysis. And three, the scale of impact. These changes are systemic, cutting across sectors, across industries, and across societies. So while history provides guidance, the intensity of today's convergence introduces a new complexity. At this point, it's tempting to assume that technological progress is unstoppable, that once something becomes possible, it will inevitably be adopted. But history suggests otherwise. The adoption of new technologies has repeatedly been shaped and often constrained by social forces. Four in particular stand out. The first is public trust. If people do not trust the technology, adoption slows. Secondly, governance. Institutions shape how technologies are used and how quickly. Three, the economic outcomes. Societies embrace technologies that deliver clear benefits. And four, the distribution of those benefits. When gains are concentrated and losses widespread, resistance grows, adoption slows. This is the critical point. Society does not simply accept technology, it negotiates its place. And that negotiation determines the pace and scale of adoption. Today, we can already see emerging tensions, concerns about job displacement, concentration of power, gaps in governance, and erosion of trust. In each case, the challenge is not technological capability, it's social legitimacy. So, where might this leave us? Well, one useful way to think about the future is by considering a range of possibilities on a continuum, on a spectrum, if you like. At one end of the spectrum is managed technological acceleration. In this future, innovation continues. Institutions adapt. Governance keeps pace. Benefits are shared widely. The trust is maintained in the technology. Society absorbs the disruption and progress continues. At the other end of the spectrum lies runaway technological disruption. Here, change accelerates rapidly. Institutions fall behind. Economic gains are uneven. Societal tensions rise. The speed of innovation in itself becomes a source of instability. What matters here is this: the future is not determined only by what technology can do, it's shaped by how society chooses to respond. So, what can we take away? Well, history reminds us that technological revolutions are not just technical events. They are social processes shaped by institutions, by incentives, and by human behavior. It tells us that while innovation may be accelerating, the conditions for adoption remain familiar. And it highlights a central truth. The future of AI will not be determined solely by engineers or by entrepreneurs. It will be shaped by politics, economics, public discourse, public trust, and institutional capacity. The past may not tell us exactly what the future might look like, but it does remind us of something essential. Technological revolutions succeed not simply because they are possible, but because societies find a way to live with them. Thank you everyone for watching and listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss another episode of the podcast. And do let your friends and colleagues know all about the Informing Choices mini pod. I'll see you on the next episode.